10. And indeed, we are recording the session. So welcome to everybody to the session. Welcome to our presenters. And to say thanks in advance to Zoom Sadie and to Tony Lilliot for their support in the session. As the chair, it is important for me to remind you about the time, 20 minutes for presentation, 10 minutes, and James will be assisting me with the time, and he'll be putting into the chat. He'll be putting in sort of time intervals. We now have 5 minutes left, 2 minutes left for your presentation. So I'd really like you to take note of the chat, keep an eye on the chat as we're going through. Furthermore, I would encourage you to post any questions that you have in the chat as well, because Tony will then pick up the questions from the chat as well for us so that we could become more interactive. And so I would like to introduce to you Ntji Shabangu and Kgadi Mathabathe from the University of Pretoria. And please go ahead, let us hear your story on evaluation of telephone tutoring as an emergency remote teaching support tool for home-based students during COVID-19 outbreak in South Africa. Oh, okay, let's hear, go for it.
Thank you so much, Delicia. I want to thank everybody who's taken out the time to listen to our presentation this morning. I'm presenting together with Ms. Ntji Shabangu, and she's the postgraduate faculty student advisor at the Natural and Agricultural Sciences faculty at the University of Pretoria. And I am the Deputy Director, Academic Development in the University of Pretoria's Teaching and Learning Center called Department for Education Innovation. And we were very active in this project of telephone tutoring. I'm wondering, will I be able to navigate the slides? Is somebody doing that for us?
I think you would just say next and then we'll move on.
Thank you so much. All right, so we will, as an introduction, just give you a bit of background in terms of where the project started, and how we came to the decision to offer the initiative as part of the interventions that were introduced as a result of remote teaching and learning. But the bulk of our presentation really is the monitoring and evaluation project that we then conducted on the initiative itself. And this is what will be discussed in the methodology, the results, and we will just end off with a little bit of discussion of the lessons learned as well as recommendations. Next slide, please. So COVID-19, as we all know, disrupted teaching and learning across the globe in all teaching and learning institutions. And emergency remote teaching had to kick in as an alternative measure so that we could have continuity in teaching and learning. But one thing that I think was an advantage for us at the University of Pretoria is that since 2016, we had been using hybrid teaching, which is a combination of face-to-face and online learning through our learning management system. So it put us in a better position when we had to pivot to online learning, and that is captured in this article that we provide here, lessons learned from teaching and learning during disruptions. Next slide, please. So tutoring itself, it was also one of the initiatives, teaching and learning initiatives that was affected. We had an array of modalities in terms of how we conducted tutorials, face-to-face, interactive peer-to-peer assistance, online, asynchronous, synchronous. But with with the pivot to online learning, we had the majority of the tutorials had to move online, whether in an asynchronous or synchronistic mode, where we had to rely mostly on our learning management system, Blackboard, and we use Blackboard Collaborate still to conduct most of our tutorials. So remote online teaching and learning, this was enabled through the LMS, which we called ClickUp at the University of Pretoria. So when we had to then pivot then tutorials as well, the continuity plan on tutorials also then advised that tutorials be conducted using our learning management system. Next slide, please. But, you know, we also, I must say that we appreciate the data-driven strategy, you know, nature of how we actually conduct our student success initiatives at the University of Pretoria, such that we were able through the learning management system to identify students who still had not or were not participating, were inactive in the learning management system, either in their tutorials or their normal lectures. And we at the department then started this project where we had to look at those students who were inactive and try to inquire more in terms of what were the reasons behind their inactivity. So a list of about 353 students who had no access, not even via mobile device, was received from our technology side of the department. And then we developed a protocol which would be used by our faculty student advisors to phone these students and to find out the reasons for their inactivity in the learning management system. 115 protocol forms were completed. We used Google Forms, and unfortunately about 121 students were unreachable for various reasons. And for us, again, a lessons learned here was also the importance of having updated contact details of our students in our institutions, so that when we have such things such as the pandemic hit, we are able to efficiently communicate with our students. So of those students who were contacted, 30 were identified as in need of hard copy study material. So they just said, we just need hard copy material. We may have left some of our study material in our dorms, or we don't have, we relied on the study material that we used to use from the library. 29 students expressed the need to be tutored over the telephone. And the remaining number of students had reasonable explanations for their inactivity on ClickUp, such as, you know, they were still trying to adjust, or some were still purchasing Wi-Fi devices and data and things like that. Next slide. So just to give you an overview of the kind of responses that we got through the telephone, the initial telephone calls that were made by our faculty student advisors. Some of the prominent reasons that were given were data, poor connectivity problems, network problems, students expressing that they did not have laptops, you know, trying to explain their inactivity on the learning management system. Next slide. So we then, from the 29 students who expressed the need to participate in telephone tutoring, there were also additional students that were identified by the faculties who would also benefit from telephone tutoring. And this came down to a total of 54 students in 38 modules across 6 faculties who received telephone tutoring, and also about 55 students who were sent hard copy material. Next slide. Because this was something that we were doing for the first time, we saw the need to have training for our telephone tutoring tutors. So as you can see the timeline here of events and how things unfolded, in the first week, we did a bit of tutor training, online tutor training, and this really consisted of just, conversations and also just helping the tutors understand that they would be conducting what they previously did face-to-face or maybe in a collaborate online session, but now it would be even more challenging over the phone, just to give them a sense of the kind of student that they were going to work with, and also just giving them tips in terms of the first conversations, rules of engagement, how to handle planning, and what was expected from them. And then tutoring then started in June, but we also did a follow-up of the tutors, doing check-ins with them to see how they were coping, and just sampling a couple of students as well, calling them to find out how they were receiving the telephone tutoring and what were the challenges that they were experiencing. This continued on for the large part of June, until at the end, where we also brought the tutors in for end of term reflection. So all this data we were able to gather to just get a sense of how they experienced it, what were the challenges, with the hope that this would help us as well to refine and make this initiative intervention even better for the second semester. So also students were also called to get a sense of how they experienced this. And we also followed up in terms of their performance in their exams at the end of the semester to see whether there was some impact on that. Next slide. So basically 43 tutors were identified by the lecturers and appointed across 6 faculties, including our Mamelodi campus, which hosts the extended curriculum programs. And those were the tutors that conducted telephone tutoring and were trained and supported to deliver this intervention. And just to give a sense of who were these telephone tutors, they varied across faculties. Some were administrators, some were assistant lecturers, some were already appointed tutors who had already been working as tutors before we pivoted to online learning. And in total, about 45 modules were given. Students in 45 modules were given support through telephone tutoring. We also provided the telephone tutors with airtime and data where necessary to reach out to the students. And in addition to that, support through the check-ins that we did with them. Next slide. So the next slides, I'm going to hand over to Ntji. Ntji was then brought in as a contract researcher at the end of the telephone tutoring project to do a bit of monitoring and evaluation of the project itself, and look at it from a different angle and sample a couple of students and tutors who were part of the project to give us a sense of the success and the challenges and some recommendations of how we could improve in terms of student success support. Ntji, you can take over and explain this slide.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So after the implementation of telephone tutoring, we had to evaluate and monitor to deduce the efficacy of the intervention. Can we move to the next slide, please? So we did targeted sampling of the 23 indigenous and home-based students that participated in telephone tutoring during the second quarter. And telephonic follow-up interviews captured the weaknesses, challenges, and successes. And 16 participant tutors were also interviewed through an online survey using Google Forms. And we have had a wide array of successful interventions since the beginning of this conference. So the focus of this talk will only highlight the challenges to encourage us to think about sustainable solutions for the unrealized potential of mobile learning technologies in arid, remote, and township areas that lack ICT infrastructure in the country. Can you move to the next slide, please? So interviews focused on contextual factors, which were internal and external, that influenced the telephone tutoring intervention. Next slide, please. It was established that 54.2% of the participant students resided in rural areas, with 20.8% based in township and urban areas, and only one student based in an institutional area. Next slide, please. This area of residence introduced barriers such as mobile network coverage and connectivities. And there's a citation from Janssen in 2014 that stated that there's a concerning wide array of digital divides in developing countries, with large concentration of internet infrastructures and telecom infrastructures in large cities as compared to rural and township areas. But despite the growing numbers of access to mobile devices in some of the arid rural areas, there's only been 54.2% of participants that reported to have poor mobile network coverage, while 29.2% had good coverage and 16.7% had quite an average coverage. So majority of the students had access to a smartphone that would potentially be used for complex multimedia use and tutoring activities. Next slide, please. So it should be noted that 66.7% of the participants were first-generation students with limited or no support bearing the context of their immediate environment, which contributed to the feelings of alienation and loss of interest in academic activities or participation. Next slide, please. Majority of the first-generation students were from rural areas, and their first-generation status and its accompanying factors exacerbated the context of the environment, made it close to impossible for the students to keep motivated. Next slide, please. So student success in this context bears or is not independent of the described factors, and these factors influence the student performance as well as the success of the intervention. Next slide, please. So student performance was compared across the 4 geographical areas in 4 different faculties, and the highest number of distinctions were obtained from participants in rural areas, which were the highest in terms of failure rate, and also the pass rate was the highest in terms of urban areas. Next slide, please. Students described mobile learning factors such as clashing schedules, poor connectivity, and lack of internet enabling devices as contributing factors to their challenges. And in terms of tutoring vehicle factors, there was lack of visual cues, which tend to be problematic when tutoring practical or abstract concept. So the home environment also contributed a fair share of issues in terms of tutor attitudes, and little mobile pedagogical knowledge influencing tutor performance. As I mentioned, staying motivated was a challenge, coupled by lack of peer interaction and resources. Next slide, please. So in their own voice, one student indicated the need for more visual cues and a cry for two-way contact opportunities instead of tutors being the only individuals with contact resources. And this will be addressed in the section, in the recommendation section of the talk. Next slide, please. So equivocally, tutors described similar issues that the students experienced, both in their understanding, both bearing a similar, more or less same understanding of their challenges. Next slide, please. So Tutor Voices were an indication of hope, despite the many challenges they faced. And they went as far as involving parents where possible to address issues such as student absenteeism, loss of interest in their studies. Next slides, please. Just 2 more minutes so we can move to the discussion session. So mobile technology use in teaching and learning is challenging, as previously described by practitioners in the space. So investment towards developing mobile tutoring material, tutoring knowledge, PCK adoption in terms of innovation of tutoring strategies is important. Next slide, please. So tutors also played a very important role in terms of proving to be useful in keeping up with the challenges that they've experienced. But also we should note that they need support in terms of developing pedagogical assistance of their tutoring and the use of mobile technology materials that can be used in tutoring practices. Next slide, please. So in the recommendation section, we are of the faith that mobile tracking of participants with no mobile devices is quite important, and also a long-term tracking of these kind of intervention is very important. Code calling for both tutors and students would enable a two-way contact stream and enforce accountability. So this is where development of infrastructure is important, as indicated in Prof. Bauer's talk yesterday. So government and network service providers, institutions of higher learning should have a dialogue on how to bridge the existing gaps. So I hear a lot of talk around post-COVID. I do not think that will ever be the case, both from a scientific and psychological point of view. So it's important that we set up functional system to aid in the times of uncertainties. And I mean, some of these resources that go in this kind of interventions are quite important because they have potential for us to use these problems as solutions across the entire continent. Think about M-Pesa in Kenya. M-Pesa is now currently used across several other countries in the continent, and it wasn't necessarily just a Kenyan solution, but it's a solution that was utilized across board. Thank you so much. Arigato.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Ntji and Kgadi. We can really thank you so much for that presentation. Any questions, please? Thank you for reminding us too that uncertainty and post-COVID aren't really things that we can run away from. We'll continue to have disruptions. We'll continue to have situations where students need to be supported in very, very different conditions that we are used to. Any questions, please? Can you raise your hand if you have a question or put in the chat? Thank you. Any questions for the team? Any suggestions or comments that maybe you would like to share with the team for their research? Maybe if you have any suggestions or comments, right? One question from Siyaphumelela. How was the descriptive data generated?
Okay, maybe I can take that. The descriptive data was generated for the tutors who had access to internet. It was mostly through Google Forms that were shared with them, intermittently throughout the process. And then with the students, bearing in mind that already accessing the LMS was an indication that they did not have internet access, we generated standard semi-structured interview questions that we would ask, but these were conducted over the phone.
Okay. Thank you. I think there was a question asked earlier, and maybe I can, okay, there's one more question. Did the call center have an inbound or an outbound stream?
We did not have a call center, and I think that's something that I learned that, for instance, UFS had, and that's something that we would like to work towards. In this case, it was just the faculty student, part of the faculty student advisors' responsibility. But also with our faculty student advisors, we also have initiated the please call me option, where students can send a please call me and they can be called back.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Any other questions? The one question I have, you raised an important point in your introduction and background, where you were referring to having updated details of the students. Have you considered the impact of the POPI Act on some of this, and the telephone calls and the way you handling that?
Yes, yes, we have. And in fact, even now, I mean, we're very conscious of that, and this is something that we need to make clear to the students in using their contact details, and that's why we also, we took the first step of having the faculty student advisors contact them and find out if they were, willing to participate in telephone tutoring, meaning that their contacts would be shared with the tutor. So these are the considerations that we need to have going forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kgadi and Ntji, for, there's a comment from Liesl Smith. She commends your dedication not to leave any students behind. Thank you, Liesl, for that comment.
Can I add something?
Yes, Tony.
Since we've got a couple of minutes left. When students, bearing in mind we're talking about self-report data here, so when students ask if their cell phone coverage is poor or average or something, I wonder if there's any sort of descriptor what that actually means, because if I was a student and I was struggling with some stuff, I might easily sort of say, yeah, I haven't got very good cell coverage and stuff like that. So I wondered if you looked into that at all in any more detail than the basic thing of poor, average, and good.
Yeah, so I think I'll also let Ntji comment on this as well. Sometimes it was, reports of the tutors themselves where they said, I would call a student and the phone, was not going through, or it was on voicemail, but we never really went further to check. But as well, there were students who were really honest in saying that, due to load shedding, for instance, I hadn't charged my phone. But also we really, as you can see, the type of data that we're reporting on, it has a strong reliance on these self-reports of both tutors and students.
So, Prof, I think the other thing is bearing the context of the study as well, like, our knowledge of the environment. We had an idea of where the students are located. So that in a way gives you an understanding of the telecom infrastructure position in those areas. So if a student says, I have poor network coverage, some of them did allude to having to walk a distance outside their homes and outside their villages to go and access network somewhere else, which is why it was quite difficult for the tutors to reach them at the time that they were supposed to be having the sessions. So poor mobile network coverage, for instance, had to do mainly with certain times of the day where students will have access to network, which was a follow-up question. When is it most convenient to call you, based on the coverage in your specific area? And that, in a way, did contribute better to how the contact and the contact clashes that were experienced between the tutors and the students. So we need to find some sort of a measure of, obviously we cannot, I think with stats SA maybe, or anything on telecoms, that can give us a bit of an indication of the type of connection that exists in certain areas, because we cannot have any measure of how the connectivity is or differs within certain areas without anything external that, perhaps with the help of telecom industry.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And thank you so much for your presentation once again. And we wish you all the success in your recommendations that you have made. Thank you, Kgadi and Ntji. We are now ready to start our second presentation in this concurrent stream. And we have a panel of speakers. I'm not sure if all of you are going to speak or if one person is going to speak. Sue, is one person or is the whole panel going to be presenting?
The whole panel will be presenting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so we are ready to start. And our second presentation in this concurrent section, students as partners and enhancing first-year student success, voices of the first-year transition officers from the University of the Western Cape. So once again, just before you start, reminder, hashtag SIA 2021. Reminder also for people to please, if you have any questions, to put them in the chat and we can take them from there. We are monitoring the chat for any questions and comments. And a reminder that in the chat as well, we will keep you updated with regards to time. We will tell you how many minutes have passed, 15 minutes, 18 minutes, 20. Thank you very much, Sue and your team. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good day, everyone. My name is Naadirah, Manie, and I coordinate the First Year Transition Program, which is our institutional mentorship program aimed at our first year students. I will be co-presenting with our First Year Transition Officers today. Next slide, please. In today's presentation, we will be covering the background to the conceptualization of the First Year Transition Program, the data informing the FYTP. I heard it through the grapevine concept and voices of the First Year Transition Officers in a panel discussion. Having said that, I will now be handing over to Chante.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chante Johannes, and I am the Community and Health Science First Year Transition Officer. It was reported on the 26th of March 2021 that university dropout rates within South Africa is extremely high, with 50 to 60% of that being first year students. This was one of the main reasons why the idea of the First Year Transition Program was developed. The conceptualization of the FYTP was fine-tuned through 2 first-year experience surveys that were administered annually with first years of the University of the Western Cape. Firstly, a student expectation survey was done prior to entering UWC, and an experience survey was done at the end of semester 1. Additionally, data from our gap analysis done from UWC's first-year student expectation and experience surveys indicate that first-year students have unmet expectations of first-year university studies. Data from the first-year experience and expectation survey concluded that students strongly agree that they feel more comfortable seeking academic support from peers as opposed to university staff or lecturers, and as a result, the FYTP was developed. From the first year experience survey, the statement of "I heard it through the grapevine" was brought up. This ultimately related to information being spread amongst peers through word of mouth because it is quick and easy. Therefore, for peers to be able to provide accurate information, the mentorship program was created, ultimately so that the correct information could be spread amongst students. The main objective of the FYTP is to enhance students' social and academic engagement and to provide a sense of connectedness to the institution so that they will stay and succeed beyond their first year of study. Additionally, this program is based on the principles of respect, reciprocity, and shared responsibility. The structure of the FYTP consists of deputy deans within each faculty, along with the DVC office and teaching and learning specialist who appointed a postgraduate student to fulfill the role of being a FYTO. The FYTO would collaborate with various faculty staff, such as first-year lecturers and administrators. First-year mentors, who are undergraduate students, are then carefully selected, appointed, and trained to be able to work with the FYTO and first-year students. The first-year students would thus have numerous support networks from their mentors, FYTOs, academic staff, student support services such as the library, writing center, or finance office, and the institution holistically, who is supported by the UCDP grant and the Siyaphumelela project.
Thank you, Chante, for that overview of the FYTP. From the structure within the faculties, we can see the vital role that our FYTOs, or first-year transition officers, play in being the link between students and academic and support staff. It also gives us an idea of the collaborative space that can be created where students actively contribute with staff in addressing learning, teaching, and support issues. We will now be going into our panel discussion where the fighters will be highlighting their partnerships with various first-year stakeholders in our institution. Tina says, stepping into the first year transition officer portfolio, I have learned to present myself as a professional as much as I'm still a student myself. Many students depend on me. Tina, you look at your evolution from being from a student to professional. Could you tell us more about this?
Thank you, Naadirah. Good morning, everyone. I am Tina Hlanjwa, a master's student in the Linguistics Department, and I am a first-year transition officer for the Arts and Humanities faculty. As a student who has been in various co-curricular programs and leadership programs in my institution, I have realized there was a gap between staff and students. As students are free to share information and co-create with each other, they leave the staff behind trying to bridge the gap with no student voices or experiences in their boardrooms. Being in this position is enabling me to be able to make the collaboration between students and staff. It has not only improved my personal and professional growth, but it has made it effective and efficient to give feedback and share information with both mentors and mentees as their peers. Thank you, Naadirah.
Thank you, Tina. Next up, Laurentia says, as a student myself, I was not always aware of the challenges that students face on a daily basis. Since becoming a phyto, I have a greater sense of understanding, nurtured by the ability to stay humble and empathize with others while still playing a leadership role in the program. Laurentia, quite a few factors which inform your role as a phyto have been mentioned. Care to elaborate on this?
Thank you, Naadirah. Hello, everyone. I'm Laurentia Opperman. I'm the first-year transition officer for the Faculty of Natural Science and a postgraduate student at master's level in the Department of Medical Biosciences. So having been an undergraduate student, I was aware of students' challenges as I was experiencing some of them myself. Being a postgraduate student, I was in a place where I did not necessarily experience these challenges anymore. But with being a phyto, I quickly became aware of them and got what I can only describe as a rude awakening to what is really going on. Some of these challenges include not being accepted for honor off-campus residences and bursaries, food insecurities, and challenges with keeping up with coursework. Many of our students do not even have device or data resources to adequately participate in online learning, thus detrimentally affecting their academics and mental well-being. As a phyto, we have a chance to better understand their challenges. This has completely changed the way I look at low student participation, failure rates, and dropout rates, as I now understand that there are other factors at play here. I've had to make sure that the space that I create for the students is that of comfortability and freedom. This sometimes means that for a brief moment, I have to forget that I am a postgraduate student. It can be so easy for us to assume that we know what first years are going through, but in reality, we do not. Our circumstances are not the same. This is when I need to humble myself and remember that in this moment, I am learning. I am learning how to lead the student. Here, I am partnering with the student to a solution, and it's not just me telling the student what to do. I'm reminding the student that I am a peer instead of some staff member. By adopting this, along with my mentors, we have been able to retain a high number of mentees and maintain mentee interaction. As phytos, we are students partnering with staff to address students' challenges to the best of our ability. To achieve this, we have collaborated with several units on campus, such as financial aid, residence and library services, Center for Student Support Services, and several others. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurentia, for sketching an eye-opening picture on the challenges and taking us through your growth within your role as a phyto and the humanity that this program shows. Next, we have Moerida. And Moerida says, through self-growth, I have gained the confidence to speak to senior staff and not be afraid to voice my opinion, respectfully, while honing my soft skills within the program and creating a work-life balance. Moerida, interesting statement about having your voice heard. Can you tell us more about this?
Thank you, Naadirah, and good morning, everyone. My name is Moerida Davids, and I'm a postgraduate master's student at the School of Government and also the Economics and Management Sciences faculty fighter at the University of the Western Cape. From being a postgraduate student to moving into the workplace environment at the university, it felt daunting at first, to say the least. So much so that I was uncertain of what to do, what was expected from me, and how will staff act towards me. However, with all the uncertainty going on in my mind, there was and still is one clear goal, and that is I need to be the bridge between the first year students and the new life at the university. The thread that connects us all is that we have all started off as first-year students at some point in our academic career, and being part of a fantastic and exciting program like this, and here I'm referring to the first-year experience program partnering with Siyaphumelela, has not only given me the opportunity to become the link to the first-year students as the journey with us on this road, but also safely opening doors and challenges that might impact and strengthen my personal and academic life. I have been fortunate to work with senior staff who supports me, and through this support and guidance, I've been able to voice my concerns on matters that are relating to the students. Also, the shift from a student to a student partnering with staff helped boosting my confidence and allowing me to make my mark. The transition was made effortlessly through working closely with all relevant academic and support staff at the university. Furthermore, the Office of the First Year Experience offers fighters opportunities such as attending workshops to enhance our soft skills and voice and various online presentation skills and many more, and these opportunities were gladly accepted by all fighters. In conclusion, I would like to say that sometimes work can take over our lives, especially when we are invested in the well-being of others. And this program has highlighted the importance of having a good work-life balance by putting measures in place that allows me to breathe and focus my energies on the students, but also growing personally. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Moerida. Next, we have Michelle, and Michelle says, this program not only gave me a sense of belonging through constant coaching, mentoring, peer support, and academic advancement, but also a sense of purpose to boldly advocate for all first years on various levels and structures with ease. Michelle, you mentioned various ways of being supported in this program. We'd like to hear more about this.
Thank you, Naadirah, and good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Jaftha, and I'm the first year transition officer for the Faculty of Education. I'm also a postgraduate student at a master's level within the same faculty. When we as first year transition officers started off on this journey, we did not know what to expect. Even though we all came on board with our different strengths and talents and had a huge amount of confidence to make a difference, we could not imagine how this program would give us more than what we ever thought possible. As fighters, we have a unique peer support system. Together, we navigate the challenges, and across faculties, we always speak with one voice. We even have our own WhatsApp group besides the official program one. We all came from different disciplines and backgrounds, and it is exactly these differences that makes us stronger together. The Department of Institutional Advancement and the Office of the First Year Experience Program has been instrumental in our coaching, mentoring, and academic advancement. The various workshops, conferences, working groups, committees, and meetings that we were part of highlights this partnership that were formed, which contributed to our overall growth and development. As fighters, we are able to boldly step out from a position of trustworthiness as ambassadors for those who are not able to have their voices heard. Through these workshops, we were given the tools not to only advocate for students at different levels and structures with ease, but also to empower students to self-advocate by positively and collaboratively impact students' lives and allow them to confidently exit our program. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for taking us through the various layers of support. Next, Chante says being a first-year transition officer has helped me grow not only academically, but professionally and socially as well. This process is very empowering for me as I'm able to help the next generation succeed. Tell us more about this, Chante.
Thank you, Naadirah. Good day, everyone. Once again, my name is Johannes, and I am the Community and Health Sciences First Year Transition Officer. I'm also a PhD candidate in the Sports, Recreation and Exercise Science Department. Within the FYTP, we have learned that networking with relevant academic and support staff is a core component of first-year student success. Even though we represent different faculties, we cannot work in silos, and therefore the notion of co-creation is important for professional development of not only ourselves as fighters, but with staff members, our mentors, and first-year students as well. With regards to social growth, we know that students are becoming more digitally inclined, and therefore one of our student interactive methods is through social media platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Becoming involved in these social media pages and interacting with students on a different level other than being on campus provides us as fighters with a deeper connection to our students and to be able to assist with additional queries and gain some sort of insight into their experiences. Especially through COVID-19, we have had many first years contacting us through these social media platforms, asking for help, needing assistance, and voicing their opinions. And so because we as fighters have knowledge of different support systems, we are able to advise accordingly. We need to utilize this platform to its full extent so that students feel a sense of belonging to the institution instead of being socially isolated. This journey has become empowering in the sense that fighters have been able to voice their opinions, manage conflict resolution, and are able to lead by example. With that said, we must lead by example. Our mentors and first years look up to us. This empowers us even more because we want to deliver the best possible support, and we will go the extra mile to guide and assist our mentors and first years. Whether it is career advice or missing a deadline for an assignment, we are there. Sometimes even after working hours, we are there. We encourage our mentors to adopt the same lead by example attitude, and as a result, mentees have developed into mentors. For example, within the Community and Health Science faculty, I've had 3 mentees become mentors. This is exactly the type of support and guidance future generations need. Thank you, Naadirah.
Thank you, Chante. Next, Brittany says, I have not only gained confidence in my decision-making abilities within the program and professional life, it also increased my self-esteem through the peer-to-peer support from my fellow fighters. Brittany, tell us more about this.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brittany Goldberg, and I'm the first year transition officer for the Faculty of Law. I'm currently doing my master's in international trade and corporate finance and governance. This program is not only aimed for the assistance of first year students, but I truly feel that it helps with the growth of those working in it, particularly as fighters. Being placed in a position where mentors and students depend on you for your support and assistance can sometimes be very challenging and draining. Not getting students the support they need can also lead to a dissatisfied feeling. Thus, the peer-to-peer support from our fellow fighters are vital. Having people in the same position as you faced with the same challenges creates a space to bounce off ideas and contact information for those challenges. It further creates a safe space to be able to express one's thoughts and ideas to people who understand the position that you are in. This factors into the growth in confidence to be able to excel better in the position that we are placed in, including bringing more initiatives to make first year students feel more comfortable and included in the university structure quicker. I've personally grown through my overseeing style when dealing with mentors in my faculty, as well as dealing with students from different backgrounds and different challenges that they face daily. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany.
20 minutes have passed. You can round up in the next 2 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. Last but not least, we have Joseph, and he says since joining the program 2 years ago, my transition into serving as a bridge between first year students and various support services on campus has enhanced my ability to take ownership of the program and tremendously contributed to my personal growth. Joseph, could you tell us quite quickly about this, please?
Good morning, everyone. I am Joseph Mayala Nsingi, first year transfer officer at the Faculty of Dentistry. I am currently doing my PhD in Applied Geology at Science Department. Since joining the program 2 years ago, this has not only enabled my personal growth, also has led me to take ownership of the program. Most of us have been first year in a university institution whereby we didn't know who to ask to when you are on campus. But this program came in, and me as a fighter to assist the first year to tap into various services provided on campus. These services have been library, financial aid office, SRC. That's where our role came in. In the process, I came to take ownership because as a first year transfer officer, I was once a first year, and I know the pain every first year face. In taking that ownership, in the process, I have taken personal growth. I have taken confidence to lead this program in such a way, contributing to the development of our face and giving them a sense of belonging. In that process, personally, I have growth. Me, only not as a fighter, the first year and the institution has benefited as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. In conclusion, the themes that emerged from our fighters' experience are as follows: created a community of practice, increased student engagement, created a sense of belonging and pride, increasing collaboration in collaborative work and collaboration skills, boost confidence and self-esteem, enhance student agency, created a sense of being empowered. Thank you very much, everybody. We have come to the end of our presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Naadirah, and to you and your team for this wonderful presentation. Any questions, please, from participants? Let us hear any questions or comments. You can raise your hand, or you can write your question, post your question in the chat, please. Thank you. Any questions for the team? I just maybe would start off with one question then. Thank you for your presentation. Your diversity that you show from various faculties and the growth is great. Could you comment on the gender diversity in your group of phytos, please?
Thank you, Delsha. I am Joseph, first year transfer officer and the only male in the program. I think the selection of phyto was done at a faculty base, and then the faculty selected its best to send to the program. So the selection was not done from the office running the program, but the faculty selected a best of the crop from each and then send it to the program. So fortunately, when the program started 2 years ago, we were 2 male and 5 female, and then the other male completed his PhD, and we had a female who replaced the male fighter. So the selection are done at the faculty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you for that. Any further questions? Any hands raised? We have all the phyto officers here with us to answer any questions that anyone might have about their experience. Okay, no questions. Thank you once again to the team from the University of the Western Cape, and we wish you well on your program and for the FITO officers as you develop and personally grow in this as students, as postgraduate students. We wish you all the best and all the best for the program. Thank you very much.
Thank
Let
you.
us, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have a few minutes as we wait for our third presentation to start at 11:10. Thank you. Some very interesting work that's been done by the universities and focusing on students, and it would be great maybe for the University of Western Cape to see a follow-up with some of the first year mentors and hearing some of their voices as well. Have you got a presentation from them soon at the conference?
Yeah, actually we do. We wanted to just showcase the FITOs and the experience they went through, but they've actually collected data from their first year mentors and their first year mentees, which I think maybe next year they could share those with you guys.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Good program. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're preparing now for a presentation from University of Free State on using data analytics to ensure that no student is left behind. And I think that focus for us in this whole session of these three presentations is really showing how the universities who are underprepared are preparing themselves for the students so that the students are not left behind. Our presentation is going to be by Gugu Tiroyabone and Rohan Posthumus. Gugu and Rohan, are both of you speaking? It doesn't seem like Gugu's here. Rohan?
Gugu's here, but
okay.
her sound is not working. Gugu, you're not muted, but your sound, when you spoke a few moments ago, I didn't hear anything.
Now?
Oh, yes.
Yes, now we can hear you. Welcome, Gugu. Nice to see you again.
Likewise,
Are both of you speaking or is only one?
No, both of us will be speaking. I'll do the intro, Rohan will do the middle, and I'll end us off.
Okay. We've got a few more minutes until we start, but just to again notify people, we're looking for you to tweet in the Twitter hashtag SIA 2021 to tweet about the conference, really get some noise out there. We also reminder to Gugu and Rohan that we will be putting the monitoring your time in the chat, so you can just keep an eye on the chat. We'll tell you when it's 15 minutes. We'll tell you when it's 18 minutes and 20 minutes. And then I don't like to disrupt you and stop you at 20 minutes, but I think we're going to see how it goes. Normally I'd allow you a little bit, 1 or 2 minutes if need be, but that will then cut down on the question and discussion time. But let's see how it goes as we get ready to start. Thank you, Gugu. I know, from years gone by, I know, yes, you've tried to keep time short and sweet, get it all done and said quickly. Thank you. So it's now 11:10, and I hand over to you, Gugu, and to Rohan. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning to the chair of this session and everyone in attendance to the session. I am Gugu Tiroyabone, and I'll be co-presenting with my colleague Rohan Posthumus. In our presentation, we will really be looking at the use of analytics in ensuring that no student left behind through the lens of academic advising. You would have heard from our partner presentation yesterday of our various initiatives pivoted and in some instances established as a response to the pandemic. We will in this presentation reflect on one of the 15 initiatives that was afforded for the advancement of advising and analytics at the UFS. I suppose it's not just in the UFS context, but for many of us across the sector, emergency was our way of being in 2020. We will really hone in on academic advising as a golden thread practice, on, in some instances, what scholars refer to as the hub of the student support wheel. In this specific flagship project, known to the UFS community as the NSLB, we have really tried to bring together the analytics and advising through a high tech and, more importantly, a virtual high touch. During the presentation, we will really discuss a bit about our student realities, how we got to being data-driven and student-centered. Rohan will take you through an analytics framework, which takes you through descriptive analytics, prescriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, as well as predictive analytics adopted in the specific initiatives. I will come back and close off with some lessons learned. So, what you might ask, what were the students' realities at the UFS that were so different to the students in the sector? Well, the answer is not really anything. Positioned as our student realities, we were confronted with the realities that we all know of. Students having network, device, data challenges, but something quite interesting that was apparent to the advisors is that students were struggling to handle the workload. Something not so foreign in a face-to-face context pre-COVID. It is these realities that prompted us to design more intentionally, not just our learning and teaching approach, but also to pivot our student support services. Academic advising during the pandemic has really permeated conversation to zoom in on what the practice actually means in the context of supporting learning and teaching. I truly hope that this conversation this morning will spark many more discussions and guide us across the sector in refining our practice, especially within the role of advising and analytics. Next slide, please. In an effort of remaining data-driven and student-centered, at the height of the lockdown, we conducted as the UFS a survey which attempted to set the tone of what were our real realities. Our device and data survey, completed by over 13,000 of our students, really tried to ensure that even in the height of the pandemic, our students remained on track. And this also presented for us an as-is picture of where to start in an effort to continue and, more importantly, complete the academic semester. We were able to understand, among many other factors, that at least 13% of the sample that completed the survey indicated that they do not have access to internet, and this propelled our efforts even more. I will now hand over to Rohan, who will discuss the analytics framework mirrored to the advising practice, which we adopted in the NSLB. This was part of ensuring no student just is left behind, but also no student falls through the cracks. Rohan, over to you.
Good morning, colleagues. Just want to check, can you hear me? Okay, great. So I'm going to walk you through what we did, and I'm going to avoid going into too much technicalities because I want you to understand the framework, but you're more than welcome to ask a little bit more about the details in the question and answer section. So before we can start working with data, we have to have a way to reason about data. You can't keep every everything in your head. You can't manage all the details. So in order to simplify your complex problem, which I believe it is, you have to break it either into phases or processes or something that assists you in organizing the workflow into nice, understandable chunks. So our framework that we used is Gardner's analytic model that he uses, and on the screen you can see the format that this framework takes. So in your bottom left, you will start with your hindsight, asking the question, what happened, and this forms the basis for your descriptive analytics. And then as the process continues, eventually you want to know, okay, but why did it happen? And now you're starting to develop some insight into your data analytics. And after you got this information, you want to start looking forward. You want to start seeing, okay, but what will happen, and what do we anticipate going forward, especially in uncertain time such as COVID. So you want to start becoming more proactive. And then to the right hand top, you'll see, okay, but what can we do to make things happen? How can we have foresight? How can we optimize our analytics? And how can we jump into the process? So for us, it looked a little bit different than those processes that I explained. For us, it was more a cycle where one process flowed into another, and one data set almost feeds another data set. So I'm going to present this framework to you, and I'm going to try to do it as practical as possible by showing you how we went through this cycle. And the four key things that I want to touch on is if we start with our descriptive analytics, what happened, the UFS learn on will help us there. Then if our cycle continue, we actually wanted to intervene very early, so our prescriptive analytics would be second. And then we paused and said, okay, but what is happening? Why is it happening? To kind of get a diagnostic feel for it. And I'll talk there about the case management system. And then we'll end off with, okay, what's going to happen next? And how can we use our feedback that we got to track the process and to look forward. So if we start with the descriptive analytics, you'll see that we tried to answer the question, what's happened, what's happening, and I'm not going to repeat everything that was said yesterday by Prof. Strydom about teach on and learn on, but we wanted to have a safety net for students and for staff, and we provided a very, if I may call it, a general support as a net to everybody, just to get this process started. But we wanted to move on to a more targeted approach, and sorry, my slide's moving. Okay, and we wanted to focus a little bit more targeted on students. And as Gugu said in the introduction, we don't want to leave any student behind. We don't want students to fall through the cracks. So even though there's a safety net, perhaps there might be holes in the safety net, and we might miss a student or two. So to avoid this, we looked at Blackboard data as our data point. And as Gugu said, the current reality was that the devices and data was a challenge. So we use Blackboard as a type of proxy for where are that specific student in this challenge. And we wanted to see, do they log on? And my slides specifically show April and May. That's when lockdown level 5 happened. And we identified 989 students in the first semester that weren't accessing Blackboard. So what we wanted to do now is that, okay, we know what happened, but how can we intervene? We know these students are not accessing, they're having challenges. So this takes us to the next step of the analytics process, where the No Student Left Behind played a critical component. So there's two things about the No Student Left Behind that I want to bring under your attention. The first one is the advisors, the central and faculty advisors nudged students. So the nudging came from the advisors, but the second component I quickly want to touch on is nudging to support. And that was the core aspects of the No Student Left Behind initiative, if I may oversimplify. So the whole idea about the holistic and hybrid support is that you'll see in the middle, we have the vulnerable student at the center, as our starting slide also showed, a data-driven, student-centered student. And then the advisor would make contact with that student via a personal call and speak to the student, asking them, why aren't you accessing Blackboard? Do you have device or data challenges? And then the advisor would nudge the student to a specific support system, and these are just a few that I can name here. So, for example, there's tutorial support via the A-STEP program. There's one-on-one advising should a student struggle with time management. There was printed materials, right site, ICT services supported with connectivity issues. So there was a very large range of support that we offered, and that's why we phrase it a holistic support. Then after we track the students, or while we're tracking the students, we wanted to see, okay, what is the effect of this holistic support? How effective are we in addressing students' challenges? And on this graph, you'll see that between the two time zones, 12 May and 17 August, the amount of students that didn't access Blackboard decreased by 79%. And we deemed this as a very successful initiative. But the question that we wanted to ask, or the question that we asked, is why, are those 204 students, why aren't they accessing Blackboard, even with all of our support that we're offering them? So this flows then into the third phase of this analytic approach, which is the diagnostic analytics. And our question would then be, okay, why aren't they accessing? Why, even after we engaged with them, we searched for answers, and we tried to address this with two things. First of all, we looked at a dropout analysis and the learner case management system, which we used to capture data that after an advisor engaged with the student, we captured that on the system. So the a dropout analysis that we did, you'll see here, the 17 November, we compared the second semester with the first semester. And what we saw is that there was a large group of students, if you can look at the bar to your right-hand side, that have not accessed Blackboard yet, but they didn't drop out either. So this kind of gave us the idea that there is a story behind the numbers that we need to unpack, that we need to dig a little bit deeper. Even though we are successful in helping students get online, there's still some unanswered questions. So the case management system, as I said, was it's a software, a platform where you capture the narrative data that advisor have with students, and this narrative served as our qualitative evidence throughout this diagnostic process. And I tried to summarize this with this word cloud, but there was essentially 4 things that came out for us. The uninducive environment is something that was very prominent. The students struggle with the degree completion related issues. For example, minimum requirements were not met. Students, it was difficult for the advisors to contact students. Either they didn't answer and the phones went to voicemail. And there was a lot of financial related queries that also told us the story. And taking these 4 things together, the idea, the story that we got behind the data is the same as we see with the national equity and success narrative. Is there's really a social divide when it comes to leaving no student behind. So the final process or phase in our analytics is the predictive part. Okay, so we know what's happening with students, but what can we do next? How can we combine the quantitative and the qualitative evidence to form a better picture? Because we changed our picture from just access and devices and data to a bigger picture of environments not being conducive. So how do we integrate these quantitative and qualitative measures and improve our student support? The next question that went with that is that this has impact on our resources and our infrastructure. So not only do we have to help students, but we have a lot of constraints with that as well. So we created the algorithm that we called the review index algorithm. And this algorithm was designed to integrate multiple data sets and to kind of give us a framework or something to make decisions with, because you have this complex problem that you're sitting with. So you'll see the risk category that we have as the first bullet was our Blackboard data. And we measure that with activity, low activity, normal activity, high activity to kind of still look at that previous findings that we had. But as you walk down through the bullets, we started adding things. We had a vulnerable student index data set. We had the device data set. We looked at first semester performance, how many modules you failed, and the unconducive environment. We added residential status to as a proxy for example, for the uninducive environment. And then in 2021, we changed a lot of these or amended a lot of these data sets that, from our lessons that we learned throughout the process. So and we also split the students because senior students had different challenges or data sets, as an example, than first-time entering students. Data sets like progression is not available for first-time entering students. So just to make this a little bit more practical, I wanted to just include a screenshot of a student, and you can see here that if we really oversimplify it, you have your categories to your left and your risks or your points system, or now it's currently a flagging system, to your right hand side. And as a student triggers different ones, a certain point gets allocated to that risk score. So if we look at this student, the student received a device, the second entry, didn't receive a laptop, and we know then that student doesn't struggle with a device. But if you go a little bit down, you'll see the second last one, for example, is Blackboard activity, and this student didn't have any Blackboard activity. So most probably the student got tests via WhatsApp or something else, because the average mark, the final mark, was still high, but the student weren't accessed as an example. So to make this just a little bit more concrete, we took all of that, was just a single student, so we aggregated all of those variables into a score, which it's the review index score, and you can see there in column H in my screenshot, for example, is the percentage, and we used that as our quantitative flag or score that we can use, and we organized or ranked students according to that. Because, as I said previously, we have to manage our resources and our infrastructure. So starting with the most at-risk students and working down to less at-risk students. And the advisors added the qualitative part, the comment section there to the right hand of the screen. You'll see that we wanted to look at both quantitative and qualitative issues to make sure that we have a holistic picture of the students, and that we can have. And as I said, this really helped us to manage our resources as well. So with that, I just want to conclude or summarize that we started with data. We went through this process. We're making predictions, we're making diagnoses, we are understanding our students better as we engage more and more with different data sets. So I'm going to hand over to Gugu to conclude our talk, and just to give us an idea what this means for higher education.
Gugu, you have broken your track record because you're now 2 minutes over. Thank you.
A minute, I'll be done. Thank you, Rohan. So what did we really learn, and what are we doing different going into the future? We have really woken up from the fact that the emergency has subsided and we are emerging into new best practices. But on the real now, it has again been proven through this initiative that advisors are indeed the golden thread in the provision of much needed student connection to the institution and various support services. Analytics is central to the advising practice, and in any of our advising efforts, adopting an analytics framework helps us understand the what, the why, and the how. But most importantly, the student narrative has informed the design to be individualized, responsive, and supportive. And I want to close our conversation with the words of Professor Vasti Torres, who delivered the keynote address during the ELETSA launch on Monday in the form of an equation. A squared multiplied by WDW equals student success. And that translated into a narrative simply means academic advising, when done well, equals student success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gugu and Rohan. Thank you for that presentation, very interesting presentation. Before we go into the questions and the questions and comments, I really want to apologize to those of you who thought you were coming to the UWC presentation and ended up listening to this exciting UFS presentation. The program was changed, and I want to encourage you to update yourself every day by looking on the website at the program, because if there are any speakers who are not available, then we are shifting the program around. So sorry about that. I really apologize for that. There are quite a few comments in the chat. And yeah, Fazilet says excellent and important work from UFS. And Marika has some question. Marika says, thanks for your very insightful presentation, Gugu and Rohan. And the question is, how did your advisors nudge the students? That's the first question. And the second question, how did you reach out to them? And what did you feel was the most impactful way to interact with the students? There's actually 4 questions. And finally, will you take what you have created forward? And yeah, so let's see. Let's first take the first question from
Marika.
Marika. Thank you, Gugu.
Thanks so much, Delicia. I've tried to also respond in the chat. I've indicated that their calls were obviously the main channel of communicating with students. We did do the SMS, every fortnight to try and encourage students to participate through the UFS Learn On campaign. We also did do emails, and we actually tried to centralize our communication via our Department of Communication and Marketing so that there's not fragmented communication going out to students. So that was it. And we have since then established and launched at the beginning of this year, advising via a chatbot, which is also used for our prospective students. So we're really trying to build on the student journey to say, while you're a prospective student, you engaged with us via bot on WhatsApp, and now we've since adopted it into supporting the student throughout their student journey. And so the text is really working. We have some agents as well. I know the buzzword for many institutions in this virtual context is agents. We've also got some agents working on the bot in the form of advisors, offering students support, and in some instances, those chats become calls. So we have really evolved. And in terms of the algorithm, like Rohan said, the algorithm is currently being used in a binary form to also continue supporting the students in this hybrid learning and teaching space.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gugu, and thank you for, as I say, just answering as well in the chat. A comment from, let's see who else. Liesel had a comment. Where's Liesel? Great work, Gugu and Rohan. Thank you very much for sharing your work. Any other questions or comments for the team? I really like what you say. There's a story behind the numbers, and I think that was really great, having a story, sharing with us and finding the stories behind the numbers. Yes, Kgadi, you have your hand up.
Thank you so much, Delicia, and thank you so much to the UFS team for such a great presentation. I realized that you're using Blackboard, and I'm wondering, the review index, you're using that as well as a flagging tool, predictive tool. Are you supplementing that with Blackboard Predict? That's my first question. And my second question is, once you have flagged the students, what do you do with the data? For instance, do you share it with the faculties and the academic staff? Thank you.
I'll take a stab and then Rohan can follow. Kgadi, I was actually typing in the chat there, sad face, that we do not have Blackboard analytics. So Rohan is the prized position winner of weekly working through Blackboard reports for us to really look at what is happening. The review index of last year really looked at the high, low, medium activity on Blackboard. And this year, we're really looking at activity or no activity. And the first point of contact is via the central advising office, where that call is, the initial call is made to the student, and dependent on what that call transpires to and gets captured on the case management system, the student can then be referred to alternative support, whether it is a mental health issue or a social welfare issue. The student is then from the center, which is advising, referred to the appropriate support. I hope that responds to your question. I don't know, Rohan, if there's anything from your side to add.
Gugu, I think you covered everything. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Our time is up. Just again to apologize to those who didn't check the program beforehand. But I also want to say that all of the presentations are being recorded. So if you would like to get a copy and listen to or watch the presentation that you have missed, I'm sure Sadie will be making that available for people. So you would still be able to listen to and watch the presentations that you have missed. We are all invited now to join concurrent session number 8. And concurrent session number 8 is the final session during this time slot, starting at 11:40, starting right away now, and then we will meet you all at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. See you at 3 this afternoon when we start off looking at the Sensi Pensanti Tech Pedagogy by Laura Rendon this afternoon. So really, thank you. Looking forward to you. And please do join the session, concurrent session 8 now for the next session. Thank you very much to Tony, and thank you to the Zoom Sadie support for your assistance. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day. There is no further session in